Beneath the scorching sun of the Judean desert, where winds carry dust and unfulfilled prophecies, a mother quietly approaches Jesus. In her eyes, Salome's, not only burns maternal love, but also a fierce ambition for her sons, James and John, to sit beside him in the eternal kingdom. She holds no worldly power, no prominence in the crowd, yet her soul harbors unshakable faith. Salome, one of the Bible's lesser-known women, boldly speaks for her belief, hope, and aspiration. Was her act a misstep or the start of a spiritual transformation? Her story is not just an ancient scripture page, but a mirror reflecting us, modern seekers of true glory. Follow this dramatic journey to uncover the grace hidden within her longing. Beneath the searing Judean sun, where golden dust swirled with each step, Salome walked slowly along the rugged path to Capernaum. Unnoticed by passers-by, a plain woman, neither noble nor powerful, she carried within her slight frame a blazing heart, aflame with maternal love and unshakable faith. Her hair draped beneath a coarse shawl, her feet calloused from endless miles, she sought not comfort but something greater, a kingdom unseen where truth and justice reigned. Salome was the mother of James and John, vibrant young men nicknamed Sons of Thunder for their fervent zeal. Mark 3:17. As Jesus' disciples, they followed the teacher, shaking the land with sermons of forgiveness, hope, and a kingdom not of this world. To many, James and John were two among 12. To Salome, they were everything, her sons, her hope, her bridge to the faith she'd staked her life upon. Once she'd lived quietly at home, tending an old pottery kiln and mornings by the hearth. But tales of a Messiah, a preaching in Galilee, stirred her soul. When James and John left their fishing nets to follow him, Salome's own silent journey began. Not through preaching, but through presence, service, and quiet sacrifices. The setting was a Galilean lakeside village, where the air held the tang of dried fish. Children's laughter mingled with waves lapping stones. Amid this deceptive calm, whispers of a new kingdom spread. Villagers spoke of a teacher healing the blind, raising the dead. Here, among plain fishermen and wary tax collectors, faith took root like a seed in parched soil. Salome wasn't alone. With women like Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Susanna, she formed a silent backbone to Jesus' mission. They cooked, tended the sick, prepared rest stops, unseen, unasked, yet vital acts of living faith. In Salome's unassuming figure lay a vibrant inner world where faith and ambition clashed, where motherly love met divine justice. By campfire light, as disciples slept, Salome sat mending a coarse tunic, gazing at her sons. James with resolute eyes and firm voice, John gentler but equally fervent. They were no longer just her boys, but men touched by destiny. Beyond pride, a deeper longing stirred, to see them not merely disciples, but seated at Jesus' right and left in his kingdom. To her, this wasn't arrogance, but love, a desire for them to be closest to grace's light. Yet faith brings trials. Whispers of Jerusalem's religious leaders plotting against Jesus kindled a quiet dread in Salome. The teacher her sons adored faced dark forces. No prophet but a mother, she sensed gathering storms. Doing nothing risked the mission and her son's future. Salome didn't yield to fear. Her heart knew her belief was true. Even if the path led to Golgotha, she'd walk it with her sons. not just with courage, but with absolute trust in God's plan. Uncertain of what lay ahead, she felt compelled to act, not to control fate, but to prove her faith stronger than doubt. Thus, Salome's journey began not in glory, but in Judea's dust, each step a silent prayer, each heartbeat blending hope and unease. It was more than following the teacher. It was a quest to discover herself, torn between motherly love and heavenly aspirations, between yearning for her son's honor and fearing she asked too much. Though millennia old, Salome's story echoes in modern mothers' hearts. In today's world of choices and pressures, who hasn't wrestled between what's best for their children and what faith demands, between success and service? In this tension, Salome's untold tale lives, a sacred mirror reflecting our own faith journeys. And this is just the beginning. Under the sweltering Judean afternoon sky, the air thickened amid the crowd gathered around Jesus. Salome stood quietly among them, shepherds, widows, merchants, children clinging to mothers. She wasn't there just to listen. A silent dread, smoldering for days, consumed her. If God's kingdom was truly near, where would James and John, her sons, dearer than life, stand within it? Jesus' voice, gentle yet firm, cut through like a breeze over dry grass. He spoke of a kingdom not of this world, where the last become first, where service trumps rule. To Salome, his words ignited a long simmering ember. If this was a true kingdom, not Rome's empire, but a divine realm above all thrones, shouldn't she seek the best for her sons? As the crowd hung on his words, Salome stepped forward. No one stopped her, but eyes turned to the simple woman, head covered in coarse cloth, gaze fixed on the teacher. She knelt, not from weakness, but under the weight of what she'd say. Her heart pounded, not just from fear, but from crossing the fragile line between faith and ambition. "Teacher," she said, "grant that my 2 sons may sit, one at your right and one at your left, in your kingdom." The air stilled. The crowd paused. Disciples exchanged glances. Some frowned, others sighed. Salome's request, simple, direct, rippled like a wave. A biblical mother dared voice what none would, a plea or a demand, courage or misunderstanding. Jesus turned to her. His eyes held no anger, only compassion. Yet his voice, soft, carried truth's weight. "You don't know what you ask. Can your sons drink the cup I will drink?" The question pierced Salome's heart. She knew the cup wasn't glory but suffering. The path to the cross, blood, tears, rejection, solitude, ultimate sacrifice. She met his gaze, knowing his meaning. But she knew her sons, James with unquenchable fire, John, kind yet keen. Trembling, she nodded. Her faith rested not on ease. She believed if this was God's path, her sons could walk it, even bleeding. Conflict didn't end there. It wasn't just the disciples' disapproving looks, stung by someone claiming what they hadn't dared dream. The true clash raged within Salome. The night before, a strange dream had visited her. She stood by the Sea of Galilee, a fire blazing on the water, fierce, radiant, yet burning nothing. It led her to a narrow desert path, ending in distant light. Waking, she told no one, but the dream lingered. A vague call, a sign. Was God warning her? Was glory's path not in demanding but enduring? Was greatness not in seats of honor, but in carrying light through darkness? That question haunted her days after. Salome wasn't easily swayed, but the silence following her plea wounded her. Disciples grew distant, some whispered behind her. Even James and John avoided her gaze, perhaps startled or uneasy by her public wish. She didn't regret her words, but felt their burden. Had she placed her sons in a bind? Had her longing for their honor overlooked humility? Each night as the group rested, waves lapping sand under moonlight, Salome sat alone, knees drawn up, staring afar. She spoke little, but a storm churned within. She knew she wasn't the first parent with ambitions for her children. Yet in a world where God's kingdom was a mystery, no one could be sure what was right or enough. Still, she pressed on. Doubts didn't kill her faith, they deepened it. No longer just a mother, Salome became a learner, releasing her own desires to grasp God's. She served, stayed by the disciples and teacher. Her gaze shifted, not just seeking her son's glory, but seeking wisdom to discern what pleased God. Amid the chaos, judging eyes, inner turmoil, cryptic dreams, Salome walked on. She knew faith's path wasn't always clear. Sometimes it meant stepping forward despite doubt, trusting without answers, loving not with expectations but with surrender. Salome's untold story doesn't end with her plea for her sons. It begins there, where she learns to transform ambition into devotion, where she discovers glory isn't seized but received in God's way. Beneath the fading golden light stretching across Judea's hills, Salome walked quietly after her exchange with Jesus. His gracious yet piercing words, "You don't know what you ask," echoing like a warning bell. Far from discouraging her, they didn't quench her motherly longing. Instead, they reshaped her view of glory, no longer something to seize, but to live, embody, and give. From that moment, Salome stepped from the sidelines into the mission's current, silent, steadfast, wholly devoted. Without grand declarations, she proved her faith through action. Each day, as the disciples trekked from village to village, Salome rose first to prepare breakfast with meager bread and figs. When someone fell ill, she quietly gathered herbs, ground them, and tended wounds. When disciples grew weary, she didn't speak, but her eyes sought ways to share their load. The woman once deemed too ambitious now served not for acclaim, but from pure love for the one she believed was God's Son. Women like Salome in the Bible, often overlooked amid tales of apostles and miracles, were the mission's unseen foundation. Their small, nameless acts sustained the journey. Salome, needing no historical record, wrote her name through daily perseverance. Even when disciples eyed her warily or criticized her bold request for her sons' thrones, she pressed on. She knew changing others' views required not argument, but living her faith. One day, crossing Samaria's tense border, a land rife with ancient grudges, the mood shifted from curiosity to hostility. A crowd hurled stones, jeering Jesus and his followers. Children screamed, adults fled. Amid the chaos, a child fell, trapped between clashing groups. Without hesitation, Salome rushed forward, shielding the child. A stone grazed her shoulder. Then strangely, the crowd stilled, as if the wind itself paused. A streak of light crossed the sky like a divine sign. No one spoke, but all felt something touch their souls. In that moment, Salome shed her image as the ambitious mother. She became the woman who braved danger for another. Disciples' gazes shifted to respect and gratitude. Whispers faded, replaced by attentive silence when she spoke. Nods when she shared wisdom. Unity when she prayed. She gained no throne but something greater. Community trust and a true place in the sacred mission. Through service, Salome grasped a deeper truth. Glory comes not from being chosen, but from choosing to serve. It's not a dazzling crown, but a steady inner light, born of selfless devotion. Yet faith's path is never smooth. Even as her heart found peace, challenges persisted. Her beloved sons, James and John, walked their own paths, but her earlier plea lingered. Other disciples, sometimes carelessly, mocked the old request. James, fiery, snapped back. John, gentler, still got drawn into rivalry. Small disputes flared, not major, but enough to strain the group. Salome overheard, seeing in her son's eyes her own past longing. The need for recognition. She knew inaction could harm the mission they all served. That night, sleepless, Salome knelt by a rock, gazing at a starlit sky, praying with a mother's heart. No longer for seats of honor, she sought wisdom. To know when to speak, when to stay silent, how to guide her sons to see true glory lies not in position, but in service. At dawn, she called James and John. Her eyes spoke before words. No rebuke, no sermon. She shared a brief tale of a mother who once sought thrones for her sons, but learned the truest throne is a humble heart. Silence followed, planting a seed of awakening in the brothers. From then, James and John changed. No more disputes or vying for status. They worked and served together. In this, they became disciples deeply loved by Jesus, not for favor, but for inner growth. Salome, watching silently, found joy not in their acclaim, but in their worthiness for their calling. Salome's untold story, from ambitious mother to symbol of transformation, shifts from self to devotion, personal desire to complete faith. In a world measuring glory by power, fame, or influence, she teaches that true glory begins in unseen service, patience amid misunderstanding, and unconditional love for children, community, and the one followed. Her story's modern resonance is profound. We may start with personal ambitions, but can end in noble service. Small acts today, a gesture, patience, sacrifice, can shape great futures. Like Salome, we're called to sow seeds of light quietly, in families, workplaces, and spiritual journeys. Beneath the ancient olive trees of Gethsemane, the night stillness shattered with hurried footsteps and anxious whispers. He's been arrested. They've chained him. Salome stood at a distance, her heart constricting as she heard the news. She watched shadowy figures with swords and spears shove Jesus, the one she revered above herself, into the dark. James and John, her sons for whom she'd boldly sought thrones beside the king, were now mere silhouettes, scrambling through olive groves, fleeing in panic. For Salome, that moment was life's greatest earthquake. Her ambitions for her son's glory crumbled. Dreams of eternal splendor turned to a stone lodged in her heart. Heavy, hopeless. In despair, she questioned, was her faith, her courage, just an illusion? Were her proud steps to Jesus asking for honor meaningless as he faced chains and persecution? Yet in that deepest crisis, Jesus' words flickered through the darkness. Whoever wants to be great must be a servant. Like a beacon, they illuminated her soul's darkest corners. Salome realized she could take another step, not to secure glory for her sons, but to stand by Jesus, the foundation of the kingdom she craved. Quietly lifting her robe, she walked, trembling but resolute, toward Golgotha, where torchlight flickered and the crowd's shouts echoed. As she neared, the air grew thick with violence and resentment. Still she pressed on. With Mary, Jesus' mother, and Mary Magdalene, Salome pushed through the throng, heedless of rolling stones and broken shards, to reach the wooden cross. Her heart ached seeing Jesus' weary yet gentle eyes, his bloodied hands gripping the cross, his frail frame trembling under the nails' weight. When Jesus breathed his last, the crowd fell silent. The blackened sky flashed with blinding light, not from torches, but as if from heaven. A night breeze stirred, thunder rumbled faintly, and Salome felt divine grace's presence. Kneeling, clutching her chest, tears fell, not for the teacher's fate, but for his promise of true glory, the glory of sacrifice, of love transcending pain. In that moment, her old ambitions for thrones vanished. Salome saw the noblest throne wasn't carved with power, but stood on Golgotha. A wooden cross, symbol of service and undying love. To be worthy of salvation, no one could sit at Jesus' right or left without walking his path of suffering. Golgotha's agony closed, but the story continued. 3 days later, Jesus' body lay in a stone tomb. Salome's heart felt petrified, yet she didn't give up. With Mary and Mary Magdalene, she prayed through 3 silent nights, clinging to hope for a resurrection miracle, uncertain but steadfast in faith. On the 3rd morning, reaching the tomb, they found no body, only the stone rolled aside. Stunned, Salome's mind sparked, "He is risen!" From awe, she became a messenger. She ran to find James and John, her steps urgent, brimming with hope. Her sons, no longer the panicked fugitives, stared in awe as their mother rushed to them, calling Jesus' name with trembling joy. Salome embraced them, tears mingling with boundless gladness. Her heart warmed, realizing her plea for right and left seats was answered beyond dreams. Not with thrones, but with the mission to spread the gospel and serve humanity. Through that emotional crescendo, Salome and her sons walked into a new dawn. James and John, forsaking rivalry, joined hands with their mother, preaching resurrection and redemption. They shared tales of a miracle reviving not just a body, but souls. Salome, once craving thrones for her sons, became a beacon of devotion, not just with bread and medicine, but with her story of transformation. As missions began, Salome no longer lingered in shadows. Revered as a witness to the resurrection, she sought no praise. She shared the cross and resurrection's light, echoing Jesus' words, "Whoever wants to be great must be a servant." She recounted her journey from throne-seeking to humble service's joy. In today's world, Salome's story resonates. Who hasn't chased status, fame, or power? But do they bring true meaning? Salome answers not just in ancient scripture, but as a modern model. True glory lies not in peaks, but in serving others, not in sitting beside someone, but in making others feel love and hope. As night falls on Golgotha's old hill, Pilgrims' footsteps echo Salome's. They come not just for relics, but to relive faith, feel resurrection's light, and hear of a woman who dared dream, dared fall, and dared rise in new hope. Salome's untold story, from throne seeker to cross embracer, lives on in quiet, powerful acts of service. Each day we can be Salome's in our own tales, releasing vain desires to give love and serve, discovering glory's true meaning, faith lived and shared. Salome traversed turbulent years, transforming from a mother with burning ambition to a living symbol of redemption and steadfast faith. Her journey didn't culminate in a throne of power, but in the quiet serenity of service, where she realized true glory lies not in titles or status, but in a heart willing to sacrifice for others. When Jesus entered Jerusalem on a humble donkey, Salome stood amid the jubilant crowd, her heart swelling with pride and anticipation. She watched disciples scatter cloaks and wave palm branches in welcome. In that moment, her dreams for James and John, her sons, her hope, seemed poised to shine, envisioning them at Jesus' right and left. But events swiftly shattered that vision. Before God's kingdom unveiled its true path, the throne she craved grew alien. Witnessing Jesus condemned, crucified, and gloriously risen, Salome understood that thrones belong not to those chasing fame, but to those loving to the end. Sleepless nights, silent prayers, weary hands sewing disciples' cloaks, or sharing bread and ripe figs. Each step with the caravan, each glance at the sick, each whisper by evening fires held her deep faith. Service was the road to God's heart. Increasingly, Salome saw her quiet role's immense value. While the world vied for high places, she, in her patched robe, smiled as she sheltered the distressed, washed travelers' feet, and shared dry bread with children. These small acts saved not just bodies, but kindled hope in souls. No longer yearning for seats of honor, she sought to bridge hearts to God's love. Salome's peace came not in the crowd's cheers, but in a rescued person's grateful eyes, or a poor man's whispered thanks. She found true treasure in the heart's chime when placing others' needs above her own. She grasped Jesus' teaching, "Whoever wants to be great must be a servant." Not all saw it at first. Disciples, initially puzzled, learned as Salome smiled through storms, endured criticism, and sacrificed, etching her mark on their hearts. One day, crossing Golgotha's hill, where Jesus died, Salome walked not just as a grieving mother, but as a witness to miracles. She saw light rise from darkness, the resurrection, and carried an unquenchable flame of hope. In the days after, with Mary Magdalene and Mary, she became among the first messengers, spreading the gospel not just in words, but through a devoted life. No longer a bystander, she was the pulsing heart of a new community. Salome's story, through trials, turned personal ambition into a shared human mission, service and boundless love. She inspired disciples, Capernaum's women, and all doubting the worth of small acts. She showed that pausing to help nearby rather than chasing fleeting glory brings true splendor. In the first century, Salome lived and died for the gospel. Today, her story echoes in our hectic lives. We all carry personal ambitions as parents, leaders, or seekers. Salome teaches that ambition isn't wrong, it drives us upward. The error comes when we chase fame, power, or recognition over faith and love. blending ambition with wisdom and compassion. We rise not just for ourselves, but light others' paths. Look to Salome, the mother who released vain thrones to embrace the cross, the woman who didn't stop at fear, the woman who changed herself to become a messenger of boundless love. Her message, courage, isn't just facing danger but confronting oneself, letting go of personal gain for a nobler path of service. Wherever you are, building a career, raising a family, seeking spiritual meaning, Salome's story walks with you. Let her image, mending robes in fig fields, remind you that today's small kindness sows tomorrow's hope. Let her service inspire you, not to forget ambition, but to channel it into good, making a difference. Today, the greatest aren't those with power or fame, but those quietly sacrificing, sparking change. Teachers, doctors, volunteers, community leaders. They're modern Salomes, sowing grace and divine justice. Each of us in any role can be a Salome, daring to dream, fall, reason, serve. Salome's untold story isn't just a biblical page, but a call for today's world. Let courage, faith, and service guide your path. Trust that grace awaits hearts ready to walk in love's light. Will you be a 21st century Salome? If Salome's story touched your heart, igniting hope and meaning, subscribe to African Tales for more inspiring tales of biblical women. Comment on what moved you most and share this with friends in the USA. Let's build a community of love, service, and grace. May you find peace in His love and light. See you in the next video.